Welcome to the Greatest Philosophers in History, a series where we explore the deepest ideas ever proposed about life, meaning, and what it truly means to exist. In this episode, we dive into the philosophy of Søren Kierkegaard, a 19th-century Danish thinker whose ideas would later give birth to existentialism. Kierkegaard lived during the Danish Golden Age, a period of intense intellectual and artistic activity. Yet, despite being remembered as one of history's most important philosophers, he famously rejected that label. He insisted that he wasn't a philosopher at all, only a man writing about life, choice, and what it means to be alive as an individual, and that word, individual, lies at the very heart of his thought. Existence and subjectivity. Kierkegaard is widely regarded as the father of existentialism, a philosophy that places the individual, not systems, not history, not society, at the center of meaning. Existentialism asks a single, unsettling question: what does it mean to exist? For Kierkegaard, this wasn't a theoretical problem to be solved with logic. It was a personal question that each person must answer with their life. He argued that truth is not something we merely understand, it is something we live. This radical emphasis on subjectivity was revolutionary. For nearly 2,000 years, Western philosophy had been dominated by the ideas of Plato and Aristotle, objective systems that largely ignored personal experience. Kierkegaard turned philosophy inward, insisting that our subjective experience is not a weakness, but the most important truth we possess. The human condition. While science has made enormous progress in understanding the external world, Kierkegaard believed that no progress has ever been made in the inner world. Human beings today suffer, hope, love, and despair in exactly the same way they did thousands of years ago. Each individual experiences reality through their own values. The way we live shapes how the world appears to us, and, in that sense, we create our own world. A troubled childhood. Søren Kierkegaard was born the youngest of 7 children. Tragically, most of his siblings died young, leaving only Søren and his brother Peter, who later became a bishop. Kierkegaard was physically frail, often sick, and socially awkward, but intellectually gifted. His father, a wealthy merchant and deeply religious man, favored Søren and shaped his inner life profoundly. One defining moment haunted Kierkegaard forever. As a young boy, cold and starving while tending sheep, he stood alone on a hill and cursed God. He never forgot it. After his father's death, Kierkegaard experienced a profound spiritual transformation. He came to believe that loving God was the solution to the fundamental misfortune of his existence, and the true purpose of life, choice and sacrifice. As a young man in Copenhagen, Kierkegaard fell deeply in love with Regine Olsen. Yet at 27, he faced a devastating choice: marriage. The priesthood, or a life as an outsider and writer. He believed that choice defines existence, and this choice would define his entire life. Ultimately, he broke off his engagement to Regine, causing scandal and heartbreak. Society ostracized him. But Kierkegaard believed that to live authentically, he had to sacrifice happiness. He chose writing. Writing as existential experiment, Kierkegaard lived off his inheritance and wrote obsessively, sometimes all night, every night. In 1843 alone, he published 9 books. He used pseudonyms, fictional authors with distinct personalities, to explore different ways of living. His goal was not to teach doctrines, but to force readers to confront themselves. He once compared society to a theater, and the church to a dishonest performance pretending to be something real. One of his most famous parables warns of a fire breaking out backstage while the audience applauds, believing it's part of the show. Kierkegaard believed this is how the world might end, in applause, mistaken for irony. Against systems and crowds, Kierkegaard despised philosophical systems, especially Hegel's. To him, systematizing life was a way of killing it. He admired Socrates, who asked questions instead of building systems, and paid for it with his life. He also stood in direct opposition to Karl Marx, who believed historical forces shape individuals. Kierkegaard argued the opposite. Individual choice is the driving force of reality. Life's task, he said, is simple but terrifying: to become an individual. The three stages of life, in either or. Kierkegaard describes two ways of living: the aesthetic life, driven by pleasure, beauty, and sensation. It seeks enjoyment, but ultimately leads to boredom and despair. The ethical life, governed by responsibility, duty, and social rules. It brings stability, but often lacks personal authenticity. Later, in Stages on Life's Way, he introduces the highest stage, the religious life, a deeply personal relationship with God, grounded in faith rather than reason. Faith, anxiety, and the absurd. Kierkegaard believed true faith requires embracing the absurd, believing without rational proof. He explored anxiety and despair long before Freud. Anxiety, for him, arises from freedom, the terrifying awareness that we must choose without certainty. Too many people, he believed, live lies, following scripts written by society, family, and culture, mistaking conformity for choice. The only escape is what he called the leap of faith, a radical commitment to one's chosen way of life, even in uncertainty. Fear and Trembling. In Fear and Trembling, Kierkegaard analyzes the biblical story of Abraham and Isaac. Abraham's willingness to sacrifice his son is ethically wrong, yet religiously right. This tension reveals what Kierkegaard called the teleological suspension of the ethical, placing faith above reason. The true believer, the knight of faith, embraces uncertainty completely, trusting that with God, the impossible is possible. Death and Legacy. By 1855, Kierkegaard was exhausted and penniless. He collapsed in the street and died in a hospital at just 42. He refused communion. He refused to see his bishop brother. Even in death, he rejected institutional religion. A large crowd attended his funeral, where protests erupted against the church claiming his body, a final contradiction befitting a man who spent his life standing alone. Kierkegaard died an outsider. But his ideas would reshape philosophy forever.